Welcome to another episode of Kent Hance, the best storyteller in Texas podcast. We start every episode with a saying of the day. Chancellor, what do you have for us today?
Today's saying's from Aristotle. He says, sometimes we make war so we can live in peace. And that's appropriate for this time. The polls show that 2/3 of the people don't want a war and 1/3 support the president. But look, the can has been kicked down the road for 50 years in dealing with the Iranians. And, if they have enriched uranium to the extent that they can build nuclear warheads, then at some point in time, if they get one, they'll use it. And you're dealing with people that are running government, and it's a religious group. The worst nuts that you can ever get are religious nuts because they think anything they come up with, they can justify. That God's on their side, and if they think it's best that they kill you, well, they'll say, we hate to do this, but God wants us to kill you. They're very irrational when it comes to foreign policy, and they've never dealt in the world in geopolitics. I go back to when I was chairman of the Railroad Commission. We looked at, I hired the Department of Geology at the University of Texas to do a study for us. And they did a study, and the study I wanted, what would cause the worst problem economically in the United States on the flow of oil if we had problems. And they came back and said the Strait of Hormuz, and that you're looking at 27 miles where there's just a short period of time that you go through that, but it's all the tankers that fill up in Saudi Arabia in the Middle East have to go through that, and the Iranians have one side of it, and could make it almost impossible if they were sitting there firing at ships that went through, and that's what they've done. President Trump did, I thought, a very smart move by putting a blockade on all their ports. Because, most of the things the Iranians get are not just produced there in Iran. And they get things from all over the world. And so they'd have a hard time subsisting, if they were in a position where they couldn't get goods into their ports. And that's what's happened for the last week. Now the Revolutionary Guard, which took over the U.S. Embassy in 1979, now they're saying, well, we're not going to let any of the ships out. And they fired at two ships this weekend that were sailing under the flag of India. And so they've kind of shut it down again. And this is going to go back and forth for some time. But they've got to realize at some point in time, Trump won't put up with it. And he's got to realize at some point in time they probably won't come to the table. And he's got the vice president involved, so he's got Rubio and vice president and his son-in-law and another close personal friend trying to work something out. But, I think the most important thing the president said was that if they'll act like a regular nation, we'll treat them like a regular nation. So that remains to be seen. But keep in mind, prices go up at the tank when you're filling up with gas, and they've gone up because of the last barrel of oil. The so-called, theoretically, last barrel of oil sets the price. Everyone's thinking, well, what if I get into the last? What am I going to have to pay for the last barrel of oil? And that's what moves it up. And the last barrel of oil, it's $100 now, or $110, $112. When this started, it was in the 50s and 60s. And so everybody gets thinking, well, it gets cut off. What do? The United States is in pretty good shape because of what's happening in horizontal drilling and what's happening in the Permian Basin. Speaking of the Permian Basin, there's some legislation they're going to look at it moving Roswell and Clovis and Carlsbad and Artesia and a few other places, southeastern New Mexico, move them to Texas. and be in Texas. And the people in New Mexico are for it big time because they just tax the heck out of them in New Mexico, and they hit them with every regulation. I mean, they're anti-oil and gas. It's the biggest thing in their treasury is that what they get from Permian Basin in New Mexico, and yet they go out of their way to make it difficult for them to do everything. There's a guy here in Austin getting sand to a oil well. You know, you got trucks hauling sand all the time. It's increased number of wrecks and everything. He built a conveyor belt of 46 miles.
Oh.
And Ben Brigham, I need to get him on the show sometime. But that shows, you know, it goes back to people thought in the 80s, when I was chairman of the Railroad Commission, we were having less and less oil and gas. And people were trying to come up with ways to find more oil and gas. And they came up with technology to produce more. And that was in the horizontal drilling. And that everyone thought that, you know, we'd be completely dependent. Well, now we're not. We're selling oil to other countries, selling oil to Europe, selling LNG, liquefied natural gas. That's huge. And that we're in good shape. If the petro business gets cut off in the Middle East, we still have a lot going here in Texas, and we're in good shape in the United States. But the price of gasoline is still going to go up because it's the theoretical last barrel of oil. That's the most important thing.
Chancellor, when you were the railroad commissioner, what was a fight you constantly were fighting when you were there? What was a big fight, you know, something you're always working on when you were there?
Well, I think one thing was the development, oil and gas development in different fields, that the industry was going fast and wanting to develop more fields and wanting to develop horizontal drilling. That was going big. George Mitchell, an oil guy, A&M alum, he's the one who came up with the horizontal drilling, and they did it west of Fort Worth, and it just, that area just bloomed as far as oil and gas production was concerned.
Do you remember, did they think Mr. Mitchell was crazy?
Yeah, everybody thought he was gambling, you know, his money, which was fine with him. It was his money. Mm-hmm. You know, he's the one that started the woodlands and also revitalized a lot of the area in Galveston. Mm. But he was a guy that was a dreamer, and he dreamed no little dreams. He always looked big and developed a lot of things that are now just natural, that go on all the time. The amount of drilling and the amount of production in the Permian Basin in Texas and in New Mexico is just tremendous. It's changed everything, and changed us, you know, in the United States, where we were importing oil and gas all the time, and now we export. You know, they had to get legislation changed, and I worked on that with some other people. Had to get legislation changed so that you could sell it to other countries. And it was such an obvious deal that even people that were not pro-oil and gas, President Obama finally agreed that it was something that should be done.
Isn't it interesting, going back to the war in Iraq, pretty much every president for the last almost 50 years has said publicly they would not let Iran get a nuclear weapon. They've all said it. You finally have a president that not only said it, but is now doing something about it, and he's taking grief from the people that said they would do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you look at whether you go back to President Bush, George H.W. Bush, or Bill Clinton, or George W. Bush, or Obama, or whoever, that they'd reached some kind of agreement. Now, Obama had an agreement with them, and it allowed them to get billions of dollars, and they spent it with Hezbollah and different terrorist group all over the world killing Americans or anyone that from the West, and so it's going on and on and on, and I guess they thought that he wouldn't do anything, but it came to a point that he did something, and it's really hurt their economy. It's going to hurt them a lot worse if they don't work out some kind of agreement. But I think that the leaders are not united in Iran right now. They had all their leadership killed in one meeting. When I say all of them, there were over 40 that were killed, and they've got a new leader, and he was the son of one of the Ayatollahs.
Of the Ayatollah, the supreme Ayatollah, yeah.
And they call him the gay leader. If I were him, I wouldn't want that word out in Iran. I mean, they're not real big on LGBTQ rights. It's just very backward. The UN had a committee that's looking into human rights and rights of women, and they had Iran on the committee, and the U.S. voted against it. I mean, they're executing people left and right that were involved in protest against that government, and that some people that have not adhered to the hijab, wearing the headdress, and that they get executed for showing dissent, and it's just a terrible situation that most of the people in the world are looking the other way. That they don't want to see it, they don't want to know about it. They hope that it'll go away someday. But with a government like that, it's not going to go away.
Do you think this whole incident has punched a lot of holes in NATO, and are they beyond repair?
I wouldn't say they're beyond repair, but they've certainly got some problems. We say, well, you need to help us on the blockade, or you need to help us on, the Strait of Hormuz, or you need to do this, because all the oil is primarily going to Europe. And so many of those countries said, we're not going to get involved. So their position is that NATO is that they don't want to get involved unless somebody attacks them. And then if that happens, they want us really involved. And so, I mean, that won't fly. It won't fly with Congress, in my opinion. It won't fly with the president at all. He's not going to put up with it. The thing that probably has made NATO the most upset is they've had to pay their fair share, and they weren't necessarily doing that. We were a pushover for them, and we were having to pay our share and their share.
Do you find it interesting that the Eastern European nations that were once Soviet satellites that have stared down communism and socialism and lived through it have really kind of leaned in to the American way of life more than the Western European countries have?
Absolutely have. And the reason is they've seen the hardships of communist rule. They've seen it firsthand, and they want freedom, and they want economic freedom, and they support Western civilization. That I think some of the people they're kinda freedom.
Not too much.
Yeah, as long as they don't have to put up with anything, as long as they don't have to pay out anything, they're for it. But if there's a little pushback, they really step aside, and we've seen that in France and in Great Britain both.
It's really exciting for what's going on in Eastern Europe right now. It's very exciting.
They have warmed up to the ideas of the last century.
Have you traveled to that part of the world, Poland, Hungary?
I have in the last 15 years, in that they love Americans, and they want to be like America, and they want to be that way in Europe, in Eastern Europe. And you take people that lived in East Germany, the hardships they lived through were difficult. It was day-to-day living was very difficult. And now that they have a taste of freedom, they're going full force.
And they're going to fight for it and to keep it.
And will not give up on that.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in Capitol. The congressman from California, Sawwell, he was a guy that kind of had it coming. I tell you, the thing to realize on this is the power and the structure within the Democratic Party that Nancy Pelosi has, and that she used him, and he was the attack dog, and they attacked Trump on the Russian Gate deal, and it was full of a bunch of just outright lies, and he got ready to run for governor, and everyone figured that it should be big for him, but it looked like that he would be in a position that maybe 2 Republicans would be in the runoff, and she wasn't going to let that happen, and so they turned on him, and he was gone in 48 hours once they made that decision. And it's kind of like when she made the decision that Biden was not going to be the nominee. She took advantage of it. She was I served with her, know her. She's a smart politician and is pretty ruthless.
Yeah, that's the word.
And that she's going to play for keeps, and that I think the Democrats that are in charge of the leadership now are still beholden to her. If she decides to get rid of Hakeem or anyone else, they're going to be gone.
She came up that way in hardball politics with her dad in Baltimore, I believe. Is that right?
He was Postmaster General when that was the biggest political appointment that a president had. Mm-hmm. But it was in Baltimore. And, Sawwell was born and raised in Iowa. And he went to University of Maryland, and then he moved out to California and worked as a prosecutor and ran on city council, and then got elected to Congress. He beat a guy named Pete Stark, and Pete Stark's office was one away from mine. Newt Gingrich's office, when I was a freshman, was the only one between my office and Pete Stark. And Pete was he was a liberal Democrat, an old-fashioned liberal Democrat, not a progressive, and Sawwell went after him, and Pete never realized what was happening and just got beat. Wasn't paying attention. Every year in Congress there will be 3 or 4 that everybody expects to get reelected, and they'll get beat. They
took their eye off the ball.
Yeah, and that those things happen, and it goes by pretty fast. Everybody's like, "Uh-oh, I couldn't believe that happened." Mm-hmm. But I had it happen to a friend of mine, and a great Congressman, Ralph Hall, and you look at John Ratliff beat him, who is now director of the CIA, and Ralph, he was the oldest person to ever serve in Congress, serve in the House, and Ralph's the one I tell the story about. Ralph Hall, of all the congressmen I knew, he could turn on a dime and pick up any conversation and make it a positive thing. If he is talking to you, he's the one that we got off a plane. We were flying back from Washington, and I was going to go on to Lubbock when we landed in DFW, and we got out, and I was walking to my gate, and he was walking along with me, and somebody yelled, "Congressman," and we turned around, and it was a guy I didn't even know who he was, and found out later that he was a neighbor of Ralph Hall's for about 10 or 15 years in Rockwall, Texas. And they hugged each other and patted each other on the back. And Ralph introduced him to me and said, "This is Congressman from Lubbock, and he's a good friend of mine, and this is my friend." And he lived next door to me in Rockwall until about 10 years ago. And the guy said 12. I moved 12 years ago to California. I just moved back. And Ralph said, I forgot to ask you, but how's that beautiful, charming, vivacious, cute, intelligent wife? And the guy said, I divorced her about 6 months ago. And Ralph patted him on the back and said, you're better off without her. he never missed a lick. I mean, he was good. He was good. He was fast on his feet, and you couldn't pin him down. But he was a great congressman and knew everybody in his district on a first-name basis, and worked hard for him. Always worked hard.
Ralph Hall.
Ralph Hall, best of all.
Was that his slogan?
That was his slogan. Ralph Hall, best of all.
I like it.
And he was always going big time. We always check our list of stupid criminals. And I think there's one that we need to look at and maybe change it to very stupid criminals. There was a guy, he was a college student. He's 19. He's from New Hampshire, and he was at Coastal Carolina College, and he was a burglar. And he would pour syrup and honey and queso in people's, TV or different, and they finally caught him. I think his lawyer's best chance on this is going to be an insanity plea. It's just the insanity are stupid.
Isn't it crazy to think that these people are among us every day?
Yeah,
they got driver's license.
Yeah, there's people out there moving around. What are they doing? And then another one in Florida had wired up his car so there was a device that would cover up the license tags. That while he was driving along, he could flip that switch and it'd cover up the driver's license.
On the plate.
The plate. Yeah, license plate. Cover it up so you couldn't see it, so somebody couldn't call in the police or something like that.
But they eventually caught him?
Oh, yeah, they caught him, and he'll get some jail time probably on that. They're very serious about that. And, you have all these people that have different methods that they think they can shortcut the law and get by with stuff, and you can't. And because they always get caught, and in this day and time, with the methods, it's just impossible.
They always forget something.
They forget something. They leave something there. There's something they do wrong, and it goes to hell in a handbasket pretty fast, and that they always get caught. I had my son-in-law, who's now district attorney in Fort Worth. He was a judge at one time, and he had a guy in front of him, and the guy was a Texas Tech alum, and told him, said he knew that I knew the guy, and he said something to him that I was his father-in-law. And the guy said, Mr. Hance is a great guy. He represented me in all my troubles out in Lubbock. It didn't help him with the judge. I don't believe I would have told that. I'd have kept that to myself.
He's busy up there, Fort Worth.
DA's office, they've got 220-something lawyers. There's a lot of issues. They led the nation in death penalty cases last year. Somebody is saying if you're going to kill somebody, you got to lure them over to Dallas. Fort Worth, they give you the death penalty. Very few death penalty cases come up now and then, but
is that something when you're prosecuting a case like that, you have to declare that you're going for it?
Yes.
Why do you have to declare that?
You have to declare it, and you can't wait and bring it up when the jury goes out, when they start looking at it. You got to declare, and if it's capital murder, you have now the option of saying that we're going for a life sentence without parole. Mm-hmm. So on a capital murder case, they can either go the death penalty or they can go life sentence without parole. And some people say, well, I'd rather have death penalty than, I've never seen anyone come up and say, I'm going to turn that down. I want the death penalty. But like my friend Boone Pickens said, somebody said that, no one wants to live to be 100. And he said, well, ask somebody that's 99 that. You may get a different answer. You may not get the answer you thought you'd get. Boone was always a good guy. I miss him, miss some of his stories, and he always had a bunch of them. He's always doing a deal. Never on the sideline. never on the sideline.
What do you always say? Coach Royal said you got luck never
hit a guy sitting in the shade.
Yeah, that's right.
As Darrell Royal, that is one of the great quotes. Another one he was showing that have on Monday after the game on Saturday, his Longhorn Club would have a get together, and he'd show the film, and he had a film, and they had the quarterback did a quick pitch to the left, but the running back went to the right. There was nobody there. He just pitched it, and the ball just hit the ground. Somebody else recovered it. And Coach Royal said when he showed that, you see that ball just float out there, he said he dialed his number, but nobody was home. Always like that. Dialed his number, but nobody was home, and they weren't. That wraps it up for today. Our saying of the day was, sometimes we make war so we can live in peace, by Aristotle.